Whitford, a seemingly tranquil village on the coast of Europe, surrounded by cliffs, rough seas, and ancient secrets. Emily Carter arrives in the town seeking peace, but quickly realizes something is amiss. Mysterious disappearances, anonymous messages, and shadows following her make her stay a nightmare. Alongside Daniel Price, a man who knows Whitford's dark secrets, Emily must navigate persecution, intrigue, and a web of mystery that seems larger than any police force could imagine. Every step they take reveals clues, strange objects, and threats that approach without warning. Among abandoned cabins, hidden caves, and dangerous cliffs, Emily discovers that Whitford is much more than a quiet village. It's a place where the past haunts, the missing are never forgotten, and the line between survival and danger is thin. Prepare for a story of intense suspense, high-stakes chases, and reality-defying mysteries. Whitford is not for the faint of heart, and every scene will keep you hooked from start to finish. Whitford, a coastal village in eastern England, seemed dormant in time. Victorian houses, narrow streets, and a gray sea seemed to hold secrets. Emily Carter, an investigative journalist from New York, arrived to report on local tourism. But on her first morning, she heard a whisper in the corner cafe. "Another one's gone ... double quotes." No one wanted to explain. They just exchanged quick glances, as if even speaking were dangerous. The cafe owner, a bald, soft-spoken man named Mr. Hargrove, discreetly placed a newspaper on Emily's table. The cover featured a photo of a smiling young woman, missing for 3 days. Didn't say anything, but his hand was shaking. Emily tried to make conversation, but he avoided her. Outside, she noticed 2 people watching her from afar, one of them writing something down in a notebook. The feeling of being followed began there. That night, Emily walked to the pier, drawn by the sound of the waves crashing against the ancient planks. The cold wind carried a metallic smell of the sea. At the end of the pier, torn police tape flapped. As she approached, she saw drag marks on the wooden floor, as if something or someone had been taken away. A sudden noise behind her made her heart race. When she turned, there was no one there, only emptiness and the distant sound of footsteps that weren't hers. Back at the inn where she was staying, Emily found an envelope under the door. There was no return address. Inside was a handwritten note. "Don't look for them. You'll be next." The letters were firm, measured. She glanced out the window, but the street was deserted. A sudden knock on the door made her stomach turn. When she opened it, there was no one there, only the echo of footsteps fading down the ancient wooden staircase. Determined to understand what was happening, Emily went to the municipal library the next day. Among old newspapers, she discovered that the disappearances had been occurring for over 20 years, always at the same time of year, always near the sea. Different names, varying ages, but a disturbing pattern. They had all been last seen near the pier. Noticing this, she noticed that the librarian, a thin woman with glasses, was watching her intently. When Emily approached to ask, the woman leaned in and spoke almost in a whisper. "You must leave, Miss Carter. Whitford doesn't forget and doesn't forgive." Before she could ask for further explanation, a tall man in a gray coat entered the library. The librarian immediately fell silent, lowered her head, and returned to her work. The man gave Emily a quick, penetrating look before leaving, as if taking in every detail of her. That night, rain pounded the inn's windows. Emily was reviewing her notes when she noticed a strange reflection in the bedroom mirror. Turning, she saw only the curtain flapping, but the window was closed. The landline rang, a shrill sound in the silence. She answered, but only heard slow breathing on the other end. Before hanging up, a hoarse voice said, "You saw the marks, didn't you?" The line then went dead. Distraught, Emily decided to return to the pier at dawn, while the city was still asleep. The fog was so thick that the horizon blended with the sea. There, at the same spot where she'd seen the drag marks, there was now a dark stain on the wood, fresh, as if something had happened hours before. She took a photo, but when she checked, the image was distorted, as if it had been corrupted. The sound of something splashing into the water made her flinch. On her way back, she passed through a narrow alley and heard quick footsteps behind her. Turning to confront him, she saw the man in the gray coat. He stopped a few feet away, staring intently. "It's not safe for you here," she said, her tone more threatening than warning. Emily asked his name, but he only half smiled and disappeared into the mist. A chill crept up her spine, not from the wind, but from the certainty that he knew more than he was letting on. Determined to find out who the man in the gray coat was, Emily discreetly asked the residents. Everyone pretended not to know, but their eyes avoided hers. Late that afternoon, she received an anonymous message on her cell phone. "Meet me at the old church. 11 p.m. Come alone." The number was unmarked. The church sat high on a cliff, abandoned for decades. The mere thought of going there at night made his heart race. At 11 p.m. sharp, Emily arrived at the church. The wind whistled through the broken windows. The candles scattered on the floor indicated someone had been there recently. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was the man in the gray coat. "My name is Daniel Price, and if you continue, you'll end up like the others," he said. Before Emily could respond, a crack echoed in the ceiling. Something or someone was moving up there. Suddenly, a rope fell from above, swinging in the air, and with it came a muffled sound, like a groan. Emily and Daniel exchanged tense glances. He ran to the stairs leading to the upper floor, but before climbing, he turned to her. "Stay here, don't move." Emily, however, felt she had to follow. Every step I took toward the stairs increased the feeling that something was about to happen, something that would change everything. The upper floor was plunged into darkness. Emily climbed slowly, feeling the creak of the floorboards beneath her feet. Daniel stood before a locked door, his face tense. From inside came irregular knocking, followed by absolute silence. He tried to break in, but before he could, the knocking stopped. The sound of the distant sea seemed to invade the church, as if something outside were calling. When they finally forced the door, they found only an empty room, dust-covered and furniture covered in sheets. But in the center, there was an old tape recorder. Daniel turned it on, and the voice that came out was disturbing. Closer. Always closer. The audio ended with a muffled scream. Emily realized that the candles lit downstairs were now extinguished, and the church was completely dark. Daniel pulled Emily by the hand and led her outside. The cold wind bit their faces as they descended the cliff. When they reached the street, they saw a police car parked in front of Emily's inn. 2 officers were talking to the owner, who seemed nervous. Noticing Emily, one of the officers approached. "Miss Carter, we need you to come with us. It's about what we found on the pier this morning." His tone left no room for refusal. Inside the police station, Emily was taken to a narrow, musty-smelling room. On the table was a folder of photos. The officer opened it and revealed images of the pier at dawn. Deep marks in the wood, dark splashes, and Emily's scarf, the one she had lost 2 days earlier. Care to explain how that got there? Detective Lewis asked, staring at her as if he already had the answer. Emily felt the trap close. She tried to argue, but Lewis seemed more interested in observing her reactions than listening to her words. Then another officer rushed in, carrying a sealed envelope. Opening it revealed even more disturbing photos. Emily talking to Daniel at the church. "This man doesn't exist in the Whitford resident registry," the officer said. Emily froze. If Daniel wasn't a resident, who was he? Released hours later, Emily found Daniel waiting on the corner, his expression grim. "They'll try to pin everything on you. That's how it works here," he said, pulling her into an alley. There, he pulled an old map of Whitford from his pocket, with red dots along the coast. Those are the places where they disappear, and tonight another one will happen. The coldness in his voice made Emily realize there was no time to waste. The map indicated a secluded spot on the coast, known to locals as Old Fisher's Point. Daniel explained that no one went there after dark except the victims. Emily wanted to know how he had so much information, but he deflected. It doesn't matter how I know. It matters what we'll find. When they reached the spot, they saw a wooden cabin nearly falling down, illuminated by a single yellow light, flickering as if about to go out. The door was ajar. Inside, the smell of salt and rust was suffocating. In the corner, a tape recorder identical to the one found in the church played the same whispering voice. Closer, closer. Beside it, a rusty metal box with a padlock. Daniel began to force the lock, but Emily noticed something on the floor. Fresh marks, as if someone had been dragged out of the cabin toward the cliffs. They followed the tracks to the edge of the cliff, where the sound of the waves seemed louder and more aggressive. There, an object gleamed among the wet rocks. A silver necklace with a small anchor. Emily recognized it immediately. It belonged to the missing young woman whose photo she'd seen in the newspaper. Before she could say anything, a beam of light struck them. Behind them, a group of men, all with flashlights, blocked the exit. Daniel simply murmured, "They're here sooner than I thought." The man at the front of the group was Detective Lewis. "I thought you were smarter, Carter," he said, advancing slowly. Daniel stepped in front of Emily, but two men grabbed him by the arms. "You don't want to see what happens to those who ask too many questions," Lewis added, lighting a cigarette as if he had all the time in the world. Behind them, the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor grew closer. A stained canvas sack emerged from the shadows, being pulled by one of the men. Emily's stomach lurched. The human outline was unmistakable. Daniel shouted for her to run, but another man blocked her path. "She's staying," Lewis said coldly. The tension in the air was so thick that the wind from the cliff seemed to have stopped. Emily realized she was at the center of something much larger than she had imagined, and she didn't know if she would make it out alive. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the opposite shore. Bright lights from a boat cut through the darkness. The group was momentarily distracted, and Daniel took the opportunity to break free from one of the men, pushing Emily toward the side of the cliff. "There's a path this way," he shouted. They descended a steep, slippery path, while behind them, shouts and quickened footsteps signaled the hunt had begun. The trail led to a hidden cove, where the sound of the sea crashing against the rocks drowned out almost everything. Emily and Daniel crouched behind a rock formation. The group's flashlights appeared at the top of the cliff, sweeping away the darkness. "They won't stop, not until they get what they want," Daniel said, breathing heavily. Emily wanted to ask what exactly did they want, but the look in his eyes made it clear the truth was too expensive. On the opposite side of the cove, a small cave entrance revealed itself at low tide. Daniel indicated they should cross, but the icy water was rising fast. They entered, and the narrow space forced them to walk almost sideways. The smell of salt and damp mingled with something else, a metallic, sour odor, like old blood. Farther on, a faint sound began to echo, a continuous murmur, impossible to identify. When they finally emerged from the tunnel, they found themselves inside a larger cave, lit by several candles stuck into crevices in the walls. In the center was a circle of stones scattered with personal items, watches, chains, shoes. Emily recognized more than one item from the photos of the missing victims. Daniel approached, touched one of the objects, and said, "They all passed through here before they disappeared. And now we're on the list, too." As Emily tried to process the scattered objects, she heard a cracking sound behind her. She slowly turned and saw shadows moving at the cave entrance. Low voices spoke, but the words were indistinguishable. Daniel took her hand, pulling her into a dark corner. They followed us, and they know we found this place. Emily felt fear tighten in her chest. Here, every misstep could be fatal. The voices grew closer, and the ground began to shake slightly. Emily noticed fresh footprints on the damp stones, coming from all sides of the cave. Daniel gripped her hand tighter and whispered, "Stay calm. We need a plan quickly." She felt adrenaline rush through her veins. Every second seemed to multiply the tension. The feeling of being surrounded by something far greater than they could face was overwhelming. In the darkest corner of the cave, Daniel found a narrow, nearly invisible passage that seemed to lead to another chamber. "It's risky, but it's the only way out," he said. Emily agreed, despite her fear. As they crawled through the narrow tunnel, a distant, panic-filled scream echoed. The sound echoed off the damp walls, reminding them that inside, the danger wasn't just real, it was imminent. The tunnel led them to a smaller chamber, where the air was even more humid and heavy. Emily noticed marks on the wall's deep scratches, as if someone had tried to escape. Daniel shone his flashlight, revealing small bones scattered among the loose stones. She swallowed, her heart racing. "I can't believe this is real," he murmured. Daniel looked at her seriously. "Reality here is crueler than any story you've ever written." Suddenly, they heard footsteps above the chamber, echoing as if they were on the cavern ceiling. Emily tried to move, but stumbled over a rock, making a dull thud. The footsteps stopped. A deathly silence fell over the room. Daniel whispered, "They know we're here. We need to act quickly." Emily felt fear tighten every muscle, but knew that hesitation could cost them both their lives. At the back of the chamber, Daniel found a stone staircase, partially covered in moss. He motioned for Emily to climb first. Upon reaching the top, a new exit appeared, leading to an open passageway lit only by moonlight. But before they could proceed, a loud crack echoed behind them. The entrance to the main tunnel was being blocked. Emily understood that escape would only be the beginning of a new nightmare. Emily and Daniel advanced through the moonlit passage, but realized the exit led to a narrow cliff, with waves crashing violently below. Each step was perilous. Gravity seemed to swallow them whole. The icy wind bit Emily's face, but Daniel kept his hand steady. "Don't look down. Just keep going," he whispered. Every movement seemed to echo in the silence of the night, alerting someone to their escape. As they walked cautiously, Emily noticed something strange on the rocks. Ancient, barely discernible symbols scratched into them. Daniel stopped and quickly analyzed them. "It's like a warning or a map. It seems they've known about this passage for a long time." Before they could discuss further, they heard voices behind them. It wasn't just pursuit. There were more people, hidden in the darkness, watching their every step. Emily's heart raced as a metallic sound emerged from the cliff's edge ropes being dragged. Daniel grabbed her, and they both dove behind a rock. A man emerged, flashlights in hand, illuminating the path they should follow. "They're trying to force us there," Daniel murmured, calculating the best escape route. Fear mixed with adrenaline, each second making the situation more dangerous. Daniel pulled Emily into a narrow crevice in the rocks, barely visible in the dim light. The man with the flashlight passed right by, unnoticed. Emily held her breath, her heart pounding. The night wind carried the scent of salt and something else, vague and nauseating. "We have to get to the abandoned cabin on the other side of the cliff," Daniel said, staring at the horizon. Every step forward was a gamble between life and the abyss. They moved slowly, loose rocks threatening every movement. Emily slipped, nearly falling into the raging waves below, but Daniel caught her. "Calm down, don't look down," he repeated. As she recovered, Emily noticed something strange. Small footprints mixed in with her own, as if someone were running ahead of them, guiding them or misleading them. The mystery of what was happening in Whitford seemed more complex than any news story she had ever covered. Finally, they spotted the abandoned cabin atop the cliff, lit only by the moonlight reflecting off the sea. But as they approached, they realized they weren't alone. Shadows moved around the structure, hidden figures watching their every step. Daniel whispered, "They're surrounding us. If we go in, I'll have to face it all at once." Emily felt fear mix with determination. Fleeing was no longer enough. They had to fight for survival. Daniel pushed the cabin door open, and it creaked, revealing his entrance. Emily followed close behind, her eyes trying to adjust to the dim light. Inside, the floor was covered in sand and rocks, as if no one had been there for years. But there were signs of recent presence: wet footprints and rope marks. A lingering metallic smell hung in the air, making Emily swallow hard. Someone had been here very recently. As they cautiously advanced, they heard voices outside. Someone was approaching the cabin. Daniel picked up a rusty iron bar from the ground and handed it to Emily. "Use it if you have to, but try not to panic." She felt her hands trembling, but knew this was the moment to decide: flee or face whatever was about to happen. Suddenly, the cabin window shattered with a crash. Shards of glass flew, and a silhouette rushed in. Emily screamed, but Daniel reacted quickly, pushing her into the darkest corner. The figure stopped, partially revealing itself. A tall man with a covered face, carrying a lantern and an object that reflected the light, shining menacingly. The deathly silence of the cabin was broken by the sound of Emily's heart beating like a war drum. The man advanced slowly, the flashlight's glow reflecting off the dark corners. Emily gripped the iron bar, breathing heavily, feeling cold sweat dripping down her hands. Daniel whispered, "Don't panic. We need calm." The intruder's every step seemed to gauge the tension in the air, as if he knew exactly how far they could move before reacting. Emily took a deep breath, and with a swift movement, struck the object the man was carrying, knocking the flashlight away. The light wavered, and the silhouette stumbled back, grunting in pain. Daniel took the opportunity to push Emily toward a side exit of the cabin he had noticed earlier. They ran down the narrow stone corridor, feeling each heartbeat as if time itself had slowed down. When they left the cabin, the night seemed darker than ever, as if the sky had absorbed the moonlight. Daniel looked at Emily. "It's not over yet. They'll try to surround us again." A rustling sound among the rocks indicated someone was following their every move. Emily felt fear tighten in her chest, but also a growing determination. Survival and discovering the truth about Whitford were now the only options. They ran along the uneven trail, each step threatening to make them slip on the damp cliff. The sound of waves crashing against the rocks mingled with footsteps behind them, faster by the moment. Emily's heart raced, but Daniel held her hand firmly, guiding her. "A little longer." "We can do it," he murmured, though his own expression showed tension and weariness. They reached a clearing among the rocks, where small trees grew crooked from the constant wind. The rustling behind them grew louder. Daniel pulled Emily behind a large rock, watching silently. From the shadows, figures loomed, partially blocking the exit. "They're cornering us," he said. Emily swallowed, her adrenaline surging. One of the men raised his voice. "There's no point in running, Carter." Emily realized they knew her name, and a sense of vulnerability tightened her chest. Daniel grabbed her by the waist and pushed her into a narrow side passage, barely visible among the trees. Every second was crucial. They disappeared into the darkness, but the sound of quickened footsteps behind them made it clear the siege wasn't over yet. The side passage led them to uneven terrain, full of loose rocks and exposed roots. Emily nearly stumbled several times, but Daniel held her steady. Behind them, shouts and the sound of footsteps breaking branches increased the pace of the chase. Each moment seemed to stretch time, making it impossible to discern the exact distance between them and their pursuers. As they reached a more open area of the land, they spotted an old, semi-abandoned fisherman's house that looked like it had been used as a warehouse for decades. Daniel motioned for them to hide inside. Emily entered first, trying to control her breathing. Inside, the smell of salt and rotting wood was suffocating. Every shadow cast by the broken windows seemed to carry an imminent threat. As they hid, they heard the creak of the front door being pushed open. Men's voices argued outside, trying to guess where they were. Emily felt a chill creep up her spine. Daniel grabbed a piece of wood and prepared to react, but his gaze said the same thing. Just one mistake, and they might not make it out alive. The silence that followed was so intense that every breath seemed audible. Suddenly, a crack echoed from inside the house, as if someone had stepped on a loose floorboard. Emily and Daniel huddled behind an old wooden box. The voices outside grew tense, and the sound of approaching flashlights made Emily's heart race. Daniel murmured, "Stay calm. If they find us now, we won't stand a chance." Each second seemed to drag by, and fear began to mix with the determination to survive. One of the pursuers entered, flashlights in hand, illuminating the dark interior. Emily could barely breathe. The light passed directly over them, reflecting off the damp walls. The man hesitated, looked around, and for a moment it seemed they had escaped detection. But then another creaking sound came from upstairs. The man raised his flashlight and climbed, while Emily felt panic rise within her. Daniel held Emily's hand tightly and whispered, "Let's go up through the attic. It might be narrow, but it's our chance." They crawled to a dust-covered opening, climbing carefully. The sound of footsteps below was fading but still audible, and every creak of the floorboards threatened to give them away. Emily's heart pounded, but she knew this was the only route to survival. In the attic, moonlight filtered through the cracks, illuminating cobwebs and dust-covered furniture. Daniel kept Emily close to the wall, watching the stairs below. They could hear whispers and cautious footsteps climbing. Every movement seemed amplified by the silence of the attic. Emily felt fear mix with adrenaline. Any mistake, and they would be discovered instantly. As they hid, one of the pursuers entered the attic, flashlights sweeping the space. Daniel held Emily tightly, forcing her to crouch even lower. The man walked slowly, almost touching them with the tip of the flashlight, but he didn't notice them. When he left, Daniel whispered, "We can't wait any longer. We have to go down and face this. It's now or never." Emily swallowed, feeling her courage mix with her fear. They descended the wooden stairs silently, each step measured. When they reached the door, they were surprised by Daniel Price, the man who had been guiding them from the beginning, pointing a gun. Emily froze. Daniel whispered, "I tried to protect her, but they forced me to choose between running away and—" Before he could finish, the sound of distant sirens echoed from the coast. Someone had alerted the police. Tensions were running high. Everything was about to explode. Sirens sliced through the night like razors. The pursuers hesitated, casting worried glances at each other. Daniel grabbed Emily, quickly leading her toward the side exit of the house. Each footstep seemed to echo through the darkness, but the police were coming. Emily felt adrenaline rushing through her veins, her heart nearly bursting as she tried to absorb every detail of that critical moment. As they reached the cliff, they saw police boats approaching, flashlights illuminating the dark water. The pursuers tried to retreat, but they were too numerous and surrounded. Emily finally managed to breathe, feeling that perhaps they were safe for a moment. Daniel held her tightly, murmuring, "It's not completely over yet, but we've made a step forward." Tension still hung in the air, but hope emerged for the first time all night. A helicopter appeared on the horizon, its lights piercing the darkness like spears. The pursuers, realizing there was no escape route, retreated into the shadows of the rocks. Emily and Daniel were quickly led to safety by the police. As they were pulled away from the shore, Emily looked back and saw the isolated cabin, the cliff, and the raging sea. It all seemed like a nightmare scene, but she knew she had survived to tell the tale. At the police station, Emily was questioned again, but now there was a sense of relief in the air. Detective Lewis appeared, looking at her with a mixture of respect and apprehension. "You gave us valuable information. We were able to detain part of the group, thanks to you and Daniel." Emily felt the weight of the night slowly lift, but she also realized that many questions still remained unanswered. Daniel, at her side, revealed the reason for his deep knowledge of Whitford. He had lost someone close to him in past disappearances and had been investigating alone for years, infiltrating the criminal group to map their operations. Emily realized that his courage and the risk he had taken were extraordinary, and that their survival had required more than mere luck. As they walked through the now safe town, Emily gazed at the quiet streets, the Victorian houses, and the distant sea. Whitford seemed sleepy again, but she knew the village held secrets yet to be revealed. Daniel placed his hand on her shoulder. "Whitford has changed, but the past always finds a way back." Emily felt that, although the chase was over, the mystery would never be completely erased. In the following days, Emily revisited the cabin and the pier, now under police surveillance. Every detail seemed to carry the weight of the previous nights. Objects previously scattered were collected as evidence, but something still lingered, a feeling that Whitford harbored deeper secrets. Emily realized that, despite all the exposure, the village remained intact with its mystery. Daniel followed Emily, watching every shadow and movement. "Even with part of the group detained, there are others. They don't give up easily," he said. Emily felt a shiver. Whitford was a beautiful place, seemingly peaceful, but now she knew that silence could hide unimaginable horrors. Night was approaching, bringing with it the memory of every dangerous step they had taken. In the last light of day, Emily and Daniel looked out to sea. The waves crashed against the rocks, relentless, reminding them of the power of the danger they had faced. She took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of relief and constant vigilance. Whitford would remain a mystery, but now they survived, aware that the past could come back to haunt them at any moment. The suspense didn't end it, simply transformed into silent vigilance.